Hi, I'm John Armato, and welcome to another Easy Jazz Spotlight for Easy Jazz FM. Today I'm talking with LA-based vocalist Staci Griesbach. I think it was around 2015 when I had dinner with Staci in Los Angeles. We took a walk after dinner, and she mentioned she was wanting to record an album. And I mentioned, hey, I'm thinking the same thing. Fast forward a few years, and in the time it took me to release one album, The Drummer Loves Ballads, she released 3, multiple singles, and a series of 100 video performances in tribute to Ella Fitzgerald's 100th birthday. So she's lapped me several times, and I've been delighted to see her do it. I first met Staci under entirely different circumstances, though. I was an executive with the international PR firm called Fleshman Hillard in Kansas City, which is where I'm from. And Staci was an intern, one of the most enthusiastic and talented ones we've had, I might add. My agency career took me to New York and then to Sacramento, and I released my album while keeping my desk job, forcing me to constantly explain to people, no, I'm a communications consultant and a jazz drummer. Staci's agency career took her to Sacramento before I got there, but after that, she went to LA, left the agency, and joined the marketing department at Sony Pictures in LA. But not long after we took that walk, she made the big leap and is now simply Staci Griesbach, LA-based vocalist. Notice I didn't modify the word vocalist. Staci was raised on a dairy farm in Wisconsin and grew up surrounded by country music, but she also played sax in her high school band, and she also fell in love with jazz. And just this week, she released a pop-oriented Christmas single. She's as in love with Patsy as she is with Ella, and she has carved out a reputation for blending the two styles. And it works. Rolling Stone called Staci's first single, Walkin' After Midnight, a gorgeous jazz interpretation of the Patsy Cline classic. Since then, Staci has appeared at clubs and festivals around the country and continues to develop new projects. It's been my privilege to play drums with her on a couple of those dates, and I have to say, Staci has converted at least one snobbish jazz musician. I think her George Jones material in particular is deeply satisfying. We'll listen to some of that, some of her country meets jazz outings, and I think you'll be impressed. But first, let's say hello, Staci. Hello.
Well, hi. I'm blushing now. You're all these glorious things said about me while I'm sitting here. I'm just like, can I record this? Oh, it is being recorded.
It is being recorded, and there are glorious things to be said because they were glorious things that you did. I think it's wonderful what you've been doing, and it's been so. I don't know, it's been fun as a friend and a colleague, a fellow musician to watch you on your journey. And so first of all, I have to say, congratulations on recording that album we talked about on our walk after dinner. So I want to start with first memories. What are your first memories of country music, your first memories of jazz, and your first memories of thinking, hey, I think these things go together?
The earliest childhood memory I have is playing piano in our 1928, in our farmhouse with the 1928 Wellington upright piano. And it was this glorious piano that was, one of those really old traditional pianos with the ivory keys, and it was just stunning. But even more so than that, I received as a Christmas gift one year a little Fisher-Price record player. And this Fisher-Price record player was like the end-all be-all for me. And it had, Mary Had a Little Lamb and all these little records. And once I graduated from that, my mom said, well, you can play with my records. She had a great collection of 33s and 45s. And so I would put those 33s, those 45s on, and I can't believe to this day that she let me play with those records. But music was always a part of my childhood. I grew up, playing the piano. Then I started taking lessons in band. I took the saxophone. I started singing the minute I got to school. And music was always part of everything that I did up through college. Every school program, every course, every summer course, every workshop, I was there. And music was always part of it. But jazz kind of came in when I started with the jazz band in high school and in middle school. And that was really through saxophone. I did play a little bit of piano, but I don't know how well I played that. I was a better horn player than instrumental. And then when I went to school, I performed with the Wisconsin Singers, and we were a singing and dancing troupe, and we did choreography and everything. So it kind of just continued my performance, regimen, if you will. But country music was always something that was part of our childhood. I mean, growing up on the farm, growing up in rural America, it was George Jones, it was Patsy Cline, it was Conway Twitty and Merle Haggard. And those voices were my childhood. But my mom also had it was like a little bit country, a little bit rock and roll. So Mom always loved the Rolling Stones and all of that. So it's like, and Elvis Presley. And so I had this lovely balance of, the radio station never stayed stuck at one spot.
Do you remember was there a particular time where you thought, there's no reason why these country tunes I love couldn't be done in this swing style that I love in the jazz band? Was that
not as a
at some
kid?
point?
I mean, that was never crossed my mind. I mean, I was just too worried about getting the tunes out, and if I was with a barbershop quartet or a saxophone quartet, it was like show up, play the notes, make sure you do it well.
Right.
It really didn't cross my mind until, like you said, later in life, I started taking lessons to learn jazz piano and kind of relearning the instrument. And it was at that time I thought, hey, I got to start gigging. And believe it or not, I was a vice president at Sony Pictures, and I would leave the studio at 4:45 to hightail it up to the Lowe's Hotel, Hollywood and Highland, to gig on Friday nights.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I worked out my book. I would pick some obscure Blossom Dearie songs.
Sure.
It was, you'd throw in Blue Skies to open just to kind of a palate cleanser. And then I kind of went into some of these more obscure tunes. And I've always found an eclectic mix of songs to do. But that said, after a certain period of time of doing that, I think it was like a couple years I was gigging there, it didn't get old, but it just got it fell flat a little bit, where I needed something that I wanted to present that was authentically me, and what was that going to be outside of just calling tunes?
Right.
Even
just
though
playing
that is
tunes can become very routine.
Yeah.
If you're just next tune out of the real book or what have you. Exactly.
Right. And a 3-time tag at the end and go, and it's just, and so I thought, listen, I need to create something that's more authentic to me. And I came home. I mean, literally, the story is as honest as it could be. I went to yoga in the morning on a Saturday, and I had this routine pre-COVID that my little vinyl collection, I would come home after yoga and I'd pick one album to play on vinyl. That was my vinyl day for Saturday.
Yeah.
And, eeny meeny, and I would choose an album. And sure enough, I picked this one Saturday. I picked the Green and Gold Patsy Cline Greatest Hits. And the minute I dropped the needle, I had been, kind of toying with what am I going to do? What is something that I could do different than what other singers are doing right now? What would be authentic to me? What would be my story? And the minute that I dropped that needle on Patsy Cline, I thought, well, Patsy Cline, she's like Ella Fitzgerald, but to the country music audience.
Yeah. And
it just happened. And at that point, even, I didn't think, I'm going to do this whole country music meets jazz. It wasn't clear to me. It wasn't really until after I was halfway through the Patsy project that I even researched and found that nobody else had done that.
Interesting.
So Patsy passed in 1963. I released my album in 2019. And I remember, I had vocalists going, oh my gosh, that's such a great idea. It was like, yeah, you don't know when those ideas are going to come or how it's going to, marry up. And so literally I released that album, and I think it was the following year, once COVID hit, and we were all kind of forced inside, and we were really reflecting. And at this point, it was like, whoa, I just launched this music career, and I was just selected for South by Southwest, and now the festival was canceled. So, we all have our COVID stories, but the question for me was, how do I make this, what is this for me? And it started dawning on me. All of a sudden, it was Shania Twain's 25th anniversary of The Woman in Me. And I went, oh my gosh, that album was my high school.
Yeah.
So it's like if Patsy Cline was my childhood, Shania was my high school. how am I not doing that? And then George Jones, Merle Haggard. I mean, it was just, then it became almost overwhelming because this whole genre opens up, it's like a whole new world of possibilities for a jazz artist.
Well, let's pause there and give people a chance to hear what we're talking about.
Great.
So I'm going to insert a cut here. We're going to play Walking After Midnight. This is from Staci's 2019 debut album, My Patsy Cline Songbook. And we'll come back and chat about it.
Okay.
I go out walking after midnight, out in the moonlight, just like we used to do. I'm always walking after midnight, searching for you. For miles along the highway, well, that's just my way of saying I love you. I'm walking after midnight, searching for you. Searching for you. Stop to see a weeping willow crying on his pillow. Maybe he's crying for me. And as the skies turn gloomy, night winds whisper to me, I'm lonesome as I can be. I go out walking after midnight, out in the moonlight, just hoping you may be walking after midnight, searching for me. Whisper to me, I'm lonesome as I can be. I go out walking after midnight, out in the moonlight, just praying you may be walking after midnight, searching for me. For me, searching for me.
So that was Walking After Midnight from Staci's 2019 debut album, My Patsy Cline Songbook. And, you know, Staci, I've always loved that particular interpretation that you recorded. For me, there's a moodiness to it that is just infectious. And, you know, and I actually went back and listened to the original to make sure I wasn't missing something. And the original is very matter of fact. It's maybe a little bluesy in places. but I feel like you really pulled the shades down and turned the nightlight on this tune. You know, it's got an intimacy and a reflectiveness about it. I'm curious if that was by intent or what led you to that particular, what I would call moody approach to it.
Well, I'll share with you, so in addition to, singing on all my albums and being the lead vocalist, I also am the producer. And so I put on my producer hat at the beginning of each project and really kind of think through what it is that I'm looking to have on the full album.
Mm-hmm.
And for these particular songs, where I'm reimagining something that's already written, not something myself that I write, I work with these incredible arrangers down here in Los Angeles, jazz piano players that are second to none, world-class musicians.
Yeah.
And for me, it's about putting together a vision of what I want the album to be, and each tune, how I want the tune to go, what I when I think about a tune, where does my mind take me? And I'll maybe jot down some notes and some ideas of where I think each song could go. And then I figure out, okay, based on that, which arranger would make the most sense to assign that tune to.
Mm-hmm.
And then I make that marriage. And then once that marriage happens, usually with each arranger, I've worked with probably 4 or 5 arrangers now. And each one has their own style. And I love that because then they bring their own style to it as well. So I may come with, hey, in this case, this arrangement was done for Walking After Midnight by Jeremy Siskind. And Jeremy and I met and we sat down at the piano. We worked through a few things. I kind of shared what my thoughts were. And then he has his incredible, these between Jeremy Siskind, Tamir Hendelman, Atmaro Ruiz, Matt Endall, Rasan Barber, Addison Fry, all these arrangers come with their backgrounds and they meet the song in a very new way too, because they typically, most of these jazz players don't know the tune.
Right. Exactly. And that's very interesting. So it's incredibly fresh for them, isn't it?
Totally fresh.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So even if I have a bias of where I think the song will go, my job as a producer is to hold that bias back and have a little self-restraint and hold that and give space to where the arranger sees and listen to that, then weigh in. Because what I've learned, and this happened specifically on Walking After Midnight, Jeremy came back with this arrangement and there's so much space in the middle.
Yeah.
And I questioned it. I said, Jeremy, I don't know. It just seems like there's so much space there. Like, do we want all of that? And, let's hear it again. And, it was very much a collaboration, but I have to give my hats off. That was Jeremy's arrangement and it was beautiful.
It's outstanding. And the caliber of musicians, I was gonna mention that because you always work with A-list world-class folks. Who did we hear on that particular cut? Was that Bob Shepard on the back?
Jeremy Siskind on piano and then Bob Shepard on saxophone. And we had talked when I mentioned that, and we were going to the studio a few weeks later. And he said, Staci, you're going to have Bob Shepard there. You just let him kind of sail.
Yeah.
And literally in the studio, it was, oh my gosh, who was on that? I know that Jeremy was on piano. I'd have to look up who was on that track for.
Yeah.
I want to say it was Kevin Canner, and it could have been Alex Frank on bass. I feel, it's funny. This is 2019. I can't remember that.
It's been a while, and you do work with a lot of great players, and I know how these projects, different people are in and out on different tracks and that sort of thing. So, but I knew I was hearing Bob for sure.
Yeah, but Bob was sitting. We were doing like "Leaving on Your Mind," and he was going to play on that, and then there was one other track in between, and so he was kind of just chilling out there, and he came in and just, it was like I think we did 2 takes. Done.
Yeah. Well, so tell me, I've talked before about the occasional struggle of, the country stations don't want to play it because it's jazz. The jazz stations don't want to play it because it's country. But talk to me about the reception you've gotten from whether it's airplay or critics or reviews, especially now that it's had a chance to sort of find its audience and you've added to your catalog. What are you hearing from both worlds, so to speak?
Yeah, well, country music is kind of in a unique space right now. It's so massive. Like mainstream country radio is all programmed, and that
Hmm.
is all from the corporate side. So, I mean, there's really, unless you're operating on like a Miranda Lambert level, you really don't get play there.
Right.
Where I found success are, some of the stations where they have the DJs play a little more Americana, a little more folk, and maybe some world music, and they have that flexibility to put it in their
Right.
programming. So like mainstream country is still a goal but for them to play a jazz tune, I think it'd be a little bit jarring for their listeners. The jazz audience, believe it or not, has been really receptive. And I think part of that is just, why I love the jazz community so much and just the premise of jazz. Jazz in and of itself to me means in its improvisational form, take one thing and build upon it.
Hmm.
Then go to the next, then go to the next. Jazz has taught me about life in COVID. How do you respond to what's happening? What do you hear? What are you seeing, and how do you respond? If you think something isn't right, how do you make it right by the next choice you make?
Yeah.
Jazz really has these life lessons built into the music. And
Well,
so natural for me to have this reception of, hey, that's interesting. Let's listen to that, and I think, Downbeat gave my George Jones album a 4-star review, which I was just tickled about. And,
sure. That's amazing.
people still don't know me. And so I think it's a little bit of like, the constant independent musician.
Yeah.
You can have all the promotional knowledge in your background, but it's a matter of just getting out there, playing for people, interacting with people, and letting people see who you are and what you present. And it's that connection. So that just, I think, takes time and awareness. Yeah. But I'm really thrilled with, the radio reception and the media reception and the fan support. And I'm hoping in these next years I'll be playing kind of bigger houses where, there will be the jazz fans sitting right next to the guy with the country music,
Well, and I'm intrigued though, because and I'm not a musicologist, but so much of country is rooted in sort of Americana roots music, Appalachian, Delta blues, even that sort of thing. And of course, jazz is based in the African American experience, which also had this roots music element, in rural parts of the South and that sort of thing. So I got to, believe that down deep those roots intertwine a little bit, and it's not too surprising to me that a couple of trees with similar roots would have come from those experiences. And for me as a player and as a listener, and I sort of joked about it in my intro, but I hadn't listened to George Jones before because, I'll own it, I was a snob. I was never drawn to country music growing up, and I sort of dismissed it. But the songwriting is incredible. The storytelling is incredible. And once you start to think about the narrative, maybe in a different melodic or lyrical setting, you really can get this amazing marriage. And I really have come to appreciate it in a way that I hadn't before.
Originally I had thought about this. I was studying Ella Fitzgerald, and I was studying, what she did for Verve and her songbook sessions and everything. And, what Norman Granz did with her. And I read a book. I mean, Norman Granz just is phenomenal. What he did with that music and with her was just incredible. And so I started thinking about it. And when I created my songbook series, Norman Granz was very much kind of in my zeitgeist because I was reading and studying Ella and her career. And originally I had thought about, do I want to make it the Hank Cochran songbook? Do I want to make it the Harlan Howard songbook? Do I want to make it the Webb Pierce songbook? These are all songwriters from Nashville. And I love that. But I thought, well, Staci, you're already taking this and marrying this, and the Venn diagram is coming together. You're making that even smaller in terms of awareness. So I decided not to go that esoteric and
Yeah.
eccentric. But it's not really. I mean, the Patsy and George wrote a little bit. Patsy didn't write. Dolly, of course, is
Oh,
one
sure.
of the all-time
Yeah.
greatest songwriters of American music. So, I think for me and Shania wrote all those songs.
Right.
She's the original songwriter along with Mutt Lange on The Woman in Me. But, to me, it's all about the song and the songwriting, which is why I'm really excited that, just now I'm releasing this new Christmas album. And on my holiday album, there are my first 4 originals. And
Well,
I
that's
tell you what,
exciting.
John, that little girl that sat at that 1920s Wellington piano is a
Yeah.
little bit excited about this.
Well, as well she should be. I had one original on my album, and it was a terrifying and delightful experience
Yeah.
to give expression to that part of myself. And I know how rewarding it can be to get done with a composition. Now, I wrote lyrics, not the music. Did you write lyrics and music?
Yeah.
Okay?
I did
Your total
everything. I played it for my family last Christmas. My brother and his kids and my sister-in-law were sitting and we were FaceTiming. And I said, hey, I've got a song. And my nephew was like, he's Mr. Cool Cat, and he was just like, okay, let's hear it, And I got done playing and he's like, it's actually good. So, it's like,
Hey,
the kids
Staci,
will
that's
tell
not
you
awful.
kids will tell you the honest truth. And I was like,
Absolutely.
so now with the single out, I actually just started asking all my friends, play it for your kids in the car and see what they think,
Well, they can play it for their kids, but we're going to play it for the listeners of this show. Just a snippet. We've got a few seconds of it to tease you guys with. And this is called You and Me at Christmas Time. It's Staci's original composition and lyrics. Single was just dropped, I think, 2 days ago as we record this. We're recording this the first week of November. So we're going to drop in a little bit of a teaser for you. Now, this is more of a pop flavored piece of music. So it gives you a flavor for the diversity of interests and range that Staci has. So let's take a listen to You and Me at Christmas Time.
'Cause it's you and me at Christmas time. Boy, we make the perfect rhyme. The mistletoe is hung just right, so let's hold each other tight. Just you and me at Christmas time.
Well, that's great, Staci. I mean, it is all the feel good you would want out of a modern pop Christmas tune. Now, did you write some jazz for the holiday album as well, or were you more drawn? Because you mentioned Shania, and she had that great country pop crossover feel. Is that where you're interested in, these days?
Well, I like it all. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
thing. It's like, I don't think, I don't do well with labels. Like when
Yeah.
someone says, oh, you're a country artist, I kind of cringe. And then when someone says you're a jazz artist, I kind of, it's like, I don't feel like each hat fits properly. There's
Yeah. Well said.
not a hat that just says one thing. We aren't. And I think as humans, we keep trying to label ourselves, and it's just not, it's just good music is good music, they say. And
Yeah.
I mean, I hope that's what I'm trying to put out. But yeah, my songwriting, I mean, I've been writing for a while. And in fact, in the early 2000s, I went and did Nashville songwriting camps, and the Nashville Songwriting Association has great programming. And I think because I love jazz so much and the intricacies and the palette that you can paint in jazz is just so immense.
Mm-hmm.
As a songwriter, there's 2 ways I can go. I can either put on a jazz hat and say, okay, today I'm going to channel Stardust, okay, and I'm going to play a little Stardust. Let me hear Stardust. Okay, now what comes to my mind, and I want to do a song about love, and all of a sudden, bam, or I wrote a song up at the Monterey Jazz Festival, Sitting on the Rocks. And it was literally after listening to Nat King Cole. I was listening to him on my walk, and I sat down, took the music off, and I wrote this tune, Asilomar. It was Asilomar State Beach. And it's beautiful. It's got jazz colors to it. It's major 7 chords, diminished chords, some really nice, normal kind of standard progressions.
Yeah.
Then, there's a tune that I wanted to write, just like the Great American Songbook, Neither of these have been recorded or released yet, but it's, very much in line with what an old time standard would be.
Mm-hmm.
So when it came time for holiday, I gave myself permission to choose what came to me with the song versus assigning myself, okay, I want to write a jazz tune or I want to write this. And
let the idea lead.
Yeah. And this pop song just came to me. And I thought, well, move over, Mariah. Here we go. That was great. And then the other ones, there's Dreaming of Christmas with You, which has a little bit more of a jazz bent, but it's 3 chords in the truth. So it's played in a jazz style, but it's 3 chords in the truth. And then in the middle of writing Dreaming of Christmas with You, Merle Haggard's face is sitting on my piano, and I broke into another tune, It's Just Not Christmas Without You. Very similar chord structures, very similar styles. And the band, when we were recording, they're like, do we want to mix this up? And I said, nope, this is how it is. I want it just like this. And I think they're separated on the album, but they're beautiful. I'm in love with It's Just Not Christmas Without You. And then I've got another tune that's an original on there. It's Raining on Christmas. Now, yes, some of these are very sad. And,
well, there's no better time to be sad than the holidays.
Well, I was going to say, this album has a little bit of everything. It starts off high and, it's kind of like, the holidays are a time of reflection. And so I have Pretty Paper on there with, Willie Nelson's Pretty Paper. Dolly Parton made Hard Candy Christmas famous. Jeremy arranged that one. I've got Your Merry Christmas, Darling, Santa Bring Your Baby Back to Me. But then Raining on Christmas, my other original, is a little bit of a gospel bent. And I've got some background singers that were from a gospel choir down here. And it really is that sort of meaningful song of, hey, it was raining all Christmas last year. And what if the water just washes over us and cleanses us and we can start new in the new year? And so anyways, it's been a joy to put my originals out. And I hope I can continue to do that while I fund the next tribute.
Well, let's move from the spiritual implications to the commercial. Now's a good time to tell people where they can find you and your music online. Where can they buy, download, or stream your stuff?
Yeah, StaciGriesbach.com. That's probably the best. StaciGriesbach.com.
And I'll get on my soapbox, and please, everybody, consider buying Staci's music instead of streaming it. It varies from platform to platform, and most people are not aware of this, but it can take as many as 1,000 streams for a musician to earn $1. So if you'd like the music you love to thrive, please buy it.
And I do have CDs available on my website for $15. It's like like a Starbucks visit.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about some of the lessons maybe learned. It's been a while since you came out with Patsy. You've got the new album. As you reflect on your experiences in between, are there things you would do differently? What have you learned about the creative process or the music business or your own relationship to music?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think any vocalist would say, well, I'd love to go back and redo the vocals. My Patsy album, I recorded 6 months after leaving the studio, my vocals. And I was going through, these last 5 years have been a transition for me. And, there's a reason that I did this at 40 versus doing this at 21.
Mm-hmm.
And, fear is something we all deal with in the human experience. And it is something that, can kind of take over us, and anxiety. And I think, my soul needed this music, and it was one of those things when I recorded the vocals, each one of my albums, I can tell that my vocals are more confident and strong. And interestingly enough, I think a lot of the music business is up here.
I think a lot of life is up there.
A lot of life is up here. It's right. I mean, the older we get, we can see these things, and it's hard. And especially with what we've been through these last few years, I mean, it's just been challenging. So to get your mind over that hump and to present something in a confident way, I think has been, really my most challenging moment of pushing through these fears and barriers that I have in my head to doing it.
It's
And
interesting to hear you.
for me, success, when people say, "Oh, congratulations on the success," I kind of question it because I don't know what they mean. But for me, success means just doing it.
Well, that's a perfect segue to an observation I had that I wanted to talk to you about. I mean, speaking of fears, you've always struck me as fearless, and that's probably not the right word, because what I observe, I think, is not somebody without fear, but somebody who does things despite the fear, perhaps, which I think is really sort of the ultimate form of fearlessness. And I think about you as somebody who is unhesitant to knock on doors of people who maybe don't know who you are yet, and to take leaps and to take risks. In particular, tell me if I've got this right. I seem to recall a story. Didn't you spend some time in Brazil learning to sing in Portuguese and incorporating Brazilian music into your music?
Yeah, I went to Brazil in 2016, right when I had Celia Vaz arranged. I did a samba meets jazz workshop, and two of my arrangements, I Fall to Pieces and Sweet Dreams, were done by Celia down in Brazil, in Rio. Like, she lives right near Copacabana and Ipanema beaches.
Yeah, I love this aspect of your personality, of your ability to say, yeah, no, I'm going to do that. I mean, it's not like that's what other people do, not me, or I may or may not be good enough, or I'm not sure how. You have, and I could be wrong, you tell me, but my perception is you're a person who's pretty much always ready to dive into the deep end.
Well, I know it looks like that, but I guess that's the funny thing, is what other people see versus your own experience of yourself.
Yeah.
And for me, what people don't know is what happens within the four walls of my house before I leave the door.
Yeah.
And I think that's the honesty of what we're living right now. We live these lives where we put everything out on social media and we do all this and everything is perfect. Everything is wonderful.
Yeah.
And we all know we're all human. We all have those same emotions. We're all going through tough times, or, someone may not have had that tough time yet, but they don't know where it, and maybe they'll never have it, hopefully. But another person is going through a struggle. And sometimes you just, I think I've been more open to sharing some of the struggle part, because I think when I was living a corporate job and just going in every day, like, okay, jump on the hamster wheel, go do my thing, come home. There was no vulnerability in that. It was a false security net to my own emotions and my own life. And I think that, going off the grid and doing something that really matters to me, that I'm putting my own financing behind, that I'm doing my own skin is in the game, it just changes. It's so different than getting paid by a corporation to, have a job. And
no doubt about it.
listen, I very well could go back to that other world, because you do have to make the money to finance the album.
Yeah.
But in the same instance, I do have that personality that I think I love to come into the room and meet people. I love people. I love organizing with people. I like making things. I love being creative. I love producing. But that's not to be said that little farm girl still has to talk herself up and say, hey, Staci, you got this. You can do this, And I think on this Christmas album was the first time I sat in my recording studio I now was comfortable with my engineer. I now could be myself. We would come out here and pour a whiskey every once in a while because we needed that. You know, and I think there was just this ease about it that I think the first time around it was like deer in the headlights. And so listen, I'm very proud of all of my albums, and they show, but when I listen back, I hear this a younger version of myself, vulnerable, trying to do this,
I think every musician goes through that. I mean, I certainly hear, when I listen back, which I don't do very often anymore, but when I listen back to my album, I hear me in a place and time. Yeah. It's a snapshot, and it immediately puts in perspective growth since then, or growth to that point, which is kind of a remarkable thing to be able to do. But there's always that, there can be a little bit of a cringe involved in that too. But, speaking of, I'm going to bring several of these threads together. You're talking about, the importance of getting off that hamster wheel, doing those things that matter to you. And I was talking about my perception of you as sort of fearless and like, no, I'm going to go to Brazil. I'm going to learn this. I'm going to work with these kinds of folks. There's a tune on your George Jones album, Walk Through This World With Me, where you sing in both English and Portuguese. And you've integrated that. This is a passion of mine, that beautiful slow bossa feel. It's just so Brazilian in its sort of sway. And it's another one of those moments where this incredible, classic country American lyric has this new life in this new musical setting. And I'd love to play that for people. So let's take a listen to Walk Through This World With Me. And this is from Staci's album, My George Jones Song.
Walk through this world with me, go where I go, share all my dreams with me. I need you so. In life we search, and some of us find. I've looked for you a long, long time, and now that I've found you, new horizons I see. Come, take my hand and walk through this world with me. Vem pelo mundo andar, por onde eu vou. Juntos vamos sonhar. Te encontrei, meu amor. O que se quer é uma paixão. Te procurei e não foi em vão. Novos horizontes vi depois de te encontrar. Me dá tua mão e vem pelo mundo andar. Me dá tua mão e vem pelo mundo andar.
was Walk Through This World With Me from Staci's 2021 release, my George Jones songbook. I just think that's such a gorgeous treatment of the lyrics, Staci, and thank you for representing this great music in a new way. I'm a sucker for alto flute too, by the way. I mean, that's just that whole mood is just velvety and beautiful. Any reflections or remembrances or stories from recording that tune?
Yeah, well, Mauro Ruiz did the arrangement, and his wife, Katina de Luna, who is Brazilian, did the Portuguese lyric translation.
Nice.
And she did the lyric translation for Patsy Cline too. And she is she's incredible. Again, that was one where we recorded the rhythm trio, and I had a different rhythm section at Mauro's tunes for the George Jones project. We did like a mega recording day in the studio. We started at like 10 a.m., went to 5, then switched out the rhythm section and had a whole separate section session going into the evening. I was on a high, so it didn't matter to me. I was ready to go. We just, these sessions, I have to say that the musicians, yes, I love to hire the best because I love to learn with them. I feel like each session that I go into, I become a better musician because I'm learning from these masters. And Absolutely. Like Mauro, he's worked with Diane Reeves. He's such an accomplished player, but then his compositions are on another level, and he brings this, lush, he's Venezuelan, so he brings this lush, otherworldly, space to it. And anyways, I really love that. And then again, Shepard comes in with the alto flute, and, he just does his thing. Yeah. And you just watch and enjoy.
Yeah. Right. Well, it's a beautiful moment captured, and I absolutely love that tune. We are rapidly reaching the end of our time together, Staci, and I want to thank you for taking time to chat. I'm looking forward to being on the bandstand with you next month at the Sound Room in Oakland, which will be a real kick. But why don't you plug any other performances, projects you've got coming up? Let people know how they can engage with you. Be a shameless self-promoter right now.
I love it. Well, it is going to be a California Christmas. We're going to be in Los Angeles at the conference room in Playa del Rey on December 1. Then December 14, we go up to the Sound Room in Oakland with John featured on the drums. And then back to LA, we're going to do a jazz brunch at Catalina Jazz Club on December 17th.
Fabulous.
Which will be a Sunday, kind of a Sunday holiday brunch. So you can come, get a mimosa, have a great, brunch, and then go rush and do your last minute Christmas shopping. The gifts will be even better if you have the mimosa. But anyways, and the album's going to be available November 10th. So, I wanted to make sure it's out there before Thanksgiving. So when people are out doing their Thanksgiving shopping and putting their holiday playlists together, they can put the new holiday music on, add me to your Spotify, and follow me on Instagram.
Fabulous.
All follows, yes.
Follow. That's all fantastic. Well, Staci, it's a special treat having known you for, I don't know, 25 years now, something like that. And it's been great to watch your journey. I love your music. I love getting the chance to perform with you when those opportunities come up. And just thank you so much for taking time to be on the show. It's been a treat.
Thank you.
Until next time, thank you, and thanks to everyone for listening, and bye for now.
Okay, bye.